All right. Let's see here. My Rode mic should be connected. Hello. We're going to see if we can do this where I'm going to start recording my global warning podcast. And you guys can watch the whole process. And then as I do that, I'm going to see if I can even perform this. Let's see if this will work. And then afterwards, I'm going to answer some questions. I'll spend some time answering some questions. And by the way, all of you should be listening to the Global Warning Podcast because it's 10 minutes out of your day, and you might learn something. All right, so let me grab my Rode mic here. So this thing, I invested in some more equipment, freaking almost like $800 for this whole Rode setup here to do a podcast. All right, so that's running, and I'm gonna have QuickTime running. Yeah, it looks like that's recording as well. And I got to get everything synced. All right, so we'll start this, and then everyone can, I'll try to answer some questions afterwards. In this episode of Global Warning, North Korea. Oh, you know what? Let me go over here to Talking Head Instructor. Oh, there we go. I haven't actually done a podcast in a very, very long time. And let's see, combination, talking head, now chat. Yeah, that's what I want. You want the chat stuff to come up there. All right. So I'm running on YouTube. I'm running on my capture device. And I'm running here. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this episode of Global Warning, North Korea drops reunification from its vocabulary. Microsoft Edge has a password problem. Putin grows wary of the war in Ukraine. The U.S. needs a joint strategy to defeat China. And a Congolese militia wants to do business with Donald Trump. Let's get started. You know, it is weird is popping in and out of character when I do this. Welcome to Global Warning with Ryan Macbeth. Here I offer a brief analysis of newsworthy events. That was bad. Gary, I'm running that again from the top. Welcome to Global Warning with Ryan Macbeth. Here I offer a brief analysis of newsworthy events, developments, and trends that have been lost in the shuffle of those larger events dominating the news cycle. To start, North Korea removes reunification language from the Constitution. North Korea recently revised its constitution to remove reunification references while adopting a more adversarial stance through the adoption of Kim Jong-un's two hostile states strategy. According to Frank Rudiger, writing over at 38 North, Kim Jong-un has not given up national unification. However, the official North Korean approach now allows a more aggressive official position toward the South, including the promotion of a public uprising and the destabilization of society that will substantially weaken progressive forces in South Korea that have advocated for cooperation for inter-Korean relations. Rudiger also quoted a portion of Kim Jong-un's speech where he criticized those who came before him and their stances towards South Korea. Quote, "For a long period spanning not just 10 years but more than half a century, the ideal line and policies for national reunification laid down by our party and the DPRK government has not brought about proper fruition from the North-South relations that have repeated vicious cycles of contact and suspension, dialogue, and confrontation." End quote. Kwon-Baek Lee and Rose Adams, writing for The Diplomat, found that despite the harsher tone towards South Korea, many North Koreans still hope to reunify with their southern brethren and see reunification as a way to secure a more prosperous and stable future. If the North Korean regime continues to run counter to the decades of propaganda that has spoon-fed its people concerning reunification, it could create some serious internal conflicts for the regime itself. However, the North isn't only partially disinclined toward reunification. It seems that over the years, South Koreans have become much less inclined to support reunification efforts, which shows just how much things have changed on the peninsula. So why does this matter? North Korea harboring greater hostility towards the South is likely to create potential flashpoints in the future. Per the Center for Strategic and International Studies, North Korea has recently secured a windfall of foreign capital and technical know-how from the Russians by supporting the Russian war in Ukraine with troops and the production of 152mm artillery shells, among other munitions. North Korea has easily secured billions in foreign capital, not to mention technical and tactical knowledge from Russia that could help it gain an edge against its southern neighbor in a potential conflict. So that was story one. All right. I got 4 more stories to go. This is actually pretty hard. Oh, yeah, I know. Someone just said, Ryan, the dry character isn't fun. I know, dude. I'm loosening up a little bit. I think the trick is like how to make this podcast accessible to people and also a little bit more serious than a standard podcast. All right, story 2 in 3, 2, 1. Next, Microsoft Edge web browser has a password storage problem. According to Michael Cann at PC Magazine, Microsoft Edge's web browser stores passwords in random access memory as plain text, meaning passwords could be easily dumped using the right software, which would allow for elevated administrative privileges. Lance Whitney on ZDNet wrote that Microsoft argues this was done intentionally and defended it, despite the serious concerns from security researchers and users. They actually said Microsoft acknowledged this behavior, but said that it is an expected feature that would pose a risk only if your device was already compromised. I mean, those are words a security researcher can say. So why does this matter? From a personal security perspective, this gives Windows users a millionth reason to never touch Microsoft Edge's web browser. If you can't properly secure your passwords, then why even use this software? This also has a huge impact on government computers and networks. The US government loves its Microsoft products, and Edge is ingrained within the Windows operating system, making it a bigger threat than what Microsoft is letting on. Your security is only as strong as your weakest member. Who's to say some government employee doesn't have a compromised system where their passwords are being dumped into some file by a hacker? And the reality is this: cybersecurity has to be part of software design and development. It can't be a second-tier issue, and there shouldn't be trade-offs. Companies like Microsoft should be called out for their bad design. In fact, companies should be questioned about these bad designs as a matter of national security. I got news for you, man. Third Cav is gay. We still have Cav. I think we went Cav and we went Rista, and now we're getting rid of all of that stuff. I do live stream. I've live streamed before. It's not very often. But I figured, I'm running this Global Warning podcast. I figured I would, oh yeah, the Canvas hack. I know, right? Like that was a big deal. I need to, I might cover that next week. In third story in 3, 2, 1. Next, Putin says, I think the matter is coming to an end regarding Ukraine. Reuters quoted Russia's Putin as saying, I think the matter is coming to an end. And this comes on the back of one of the most recent embarrassing shows of military force in Russia's yearly Red Square Victory Parade. The Victory Parade, which is a holdover from the days of the Soviet Union, is meant to be a grand celebration commemorating the end of the Great Patriotic War, which is the Soviet and later Russian word for World War II against Nazi Germany. A recent article in The Economist writes, for the first time in 2 decades, tanks and other military vehicles did not rumble through Red Square in celebration of the Soviet Union's role in defeating Nazi Germany. To add to Russian national embarrassment, Ukraine's President Zelensky issued a decree saying Red Square Victory Day Parade was essentially off limits for Ukrainian drone and missile attacks. In fact, he even gave the GPS location for Red Square to make sure nobody would target it. That's a nice little troll move there, Zelensky. Then there is this independent report by the BBC and independent Russian journalists who have positively confirmed the death of at least 352,000 Russian combatants in the Ukraine war. Of the 352,000, some 261,000 are, quote, regular fatalities, end quote. The remaining 90,000 or so are men who are declared dead or missing by court order and whose deaths were registered with a delay of at least 180 days for other reasons such as bodily exchanges or late identification. These fatality numbers are aligned with Washington-based think tank Center for Strategic International Studies, which has estimated the total deaths at around 325,000 as of January 2026. Now, to put that into perspective, the U.S. lost during the entirety of World War II around 400,000 combatants. Russia, it appears, is losing the equivalent of America's 20-year war in Afghanistan every single month. So why does this matter? The war in Ukraine has cost the Russian people tremendously blood, capital, and national assets such as tanks, planes, drones, and helicopters. It has cost Russia its standing in Europe, within the region, and globally. Russia has proven to be resilient in the face of Western sanctions and tough resistance mounted by the Ukrainians. However, its days may be numbered. Russia is facing serious insolvency, military bonuses and recruits are drying up, and its economy is sliding into oblivion. Will this bring Putin to the table? You know, it is hard to say. Russia has taken a lot of punishment, and Putin seems determined to keep the war going, even if he is now signaling that he might be changing his mind. For autocrats like Putin, the war serves as a way to justify years of backsliding and bellicose practices. A failure in Ukraine could mean the end of Putin, but who or what comes next? Nobody knows. All right, that segment's done. Hello, what do you think of this U.S.-China meeting? I was thinking about doing a short on that. Why do I need to go to Thailand? Leaving the country for me is very, very difficult because I have to write an entire I have to essentially get permission to leave the country because of my job, so I can't just jet off to Thailand. All right, fourth segment. The sea is not enough. In 3, 2, 1. Next, the sea is not enough. A recent article in the United States Naval Institute. Sometimes your mouth just can't get your lips around the words. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Next, the sea is not enough. A recent article in the United States Naval Institute's magazine Proceedings argues that the dominance of the sea will not So you guys, I wanted to do this so you can see my guys, yeah, that's the take. That's the take, boys. All right, the sea is not enough. In 3, 2, 1. Next, the sea is not enough. A recent article in the United States Naval Institute's magazine Proceedings argues that the dominance of the sea will not fully deter or defeat China in the near future. Instead, it's argued that a joint strategy needs to be fully developed. The article in question is a response to Commander Jeff Van Dangel's article, National Policy in the Pan-Oceanic Navy, which argues that the Transoceanic Navy, that is the days when navies could protect force. I'm going to run that again from the article in question. The article in question is a response to Commander Jeff Van Dangel's article, National Policy in the Pan-Oceanic Navy, which argues that the Transoceanic Navy, meaning the days when navies could project force from uncontested seas, is over, and a new era of the Pan-Oceanic Navy is upon us. This new era is one that is shifting away from projecting power ashore and toward reestablishing command of the sea to enable the flow of friendly military forces and trade while denying that movement to the adversary. Bruce Stubbs, writing a critique of Commander Van Dangel's article, argues that while it is true we are standing at a new crucial point in naval power, we need to have broader and deeper strategic foundations to support and properly utilize the Pan-Oceanic Navy against China. Stubbs writes, once the Pan-Oceanic Navy achieves sea control in the Western Pacific, what does it do with it? In other words, how do we use this new strategic concept in a way that actually does something productive in terms of China or other adversaries we can engage using our naval assets. This is one of the many problems with emerging military doctrine. It takes time to develop the depth and breadth of the foundation to make such doctrine useful. So why does this matter? We can no longer assume that we are operating in naval environments that are similar to the past. The waters, along with other battle spaces, are going to be deeply contested. Doctrine needs to shift to address this. What makes things more interesting is that we're having this conversation now. This could mean the difference between success and failure in the future, especially in the case of deterring or defeating China. Militaries are often slow to change. This makes sense since the bureaucratic nature of many militaries and calcified command structures, along with various political interests, are intertwined with every decision made. However, conversations like this, especially ones out in the open, could have tremendous impact on how the military fights and wins. War is an art and a science. Winning takes plenty of creativity and ingenuity to pull it off. I know, pan and trans. It's, those are the words that were used in like great lip warm-ups like the lip trill. Ready for war, dog? How you want to blow the spot? I know these dirty cops. That'll get us in if we wear some wop. Hop in the Hummer, the Punisher's ready. Meet me a Vito with noodles. We'll do the stew while he's slipping spaghetti. Everybody kiss the fucking floor. Joey crack, fuck 'em all. If he moves, Joey shoot the fucking hole. Dead in the middle of little did we know that we riddled some middlemen who didn't do diddly. Yeah, I got my lip exercises. Bet you didn't know I could do that. All right, one last one. Congolese militia, segment 5, in 3, 2, 1. And finally, a Congolese militia wants to do business with Donald Trump. M23, a Congolese militia group, wants to secure a trade deal with Donald Trump, selling critical minerals to the United States. According to a recent article in The Economist, M23 has become increasingly desperate for a minerals deal with the United States. The U.S. government has signed deals with M23's enemy, the Congolese government, which has hastened calls by M23 leadership to get a similar deal. M23, under Western pressure, has since lost its support from Rwanda, and the situation in the Eastern Congo is becoming desperate, threatening the country's copper belt. Oh, I hit the microphone stand. I need to redo that. Starting with M23 under Western pressure in 3, 2, 1. M23, under Western pressure, has since lost its support from Rwanda, and the situation in Eastern Congo is becoming desperate, threatening the country's copper belt. M23 is playing the long game now, meaning the militia is attempting to legitimize its de facto government in Eastern Congo, and it's attempting to capture as many copper mines as possible. Doing this will give the militia group both political and economic power. So why does this matter? There are few places in the world with reliable and quality copper resources that can be tapped into. Copper is integral to the modern high-tech world. I mean, are you listening on a device with copper in it right now? Heck, without copper, you don't have smartphones, computers, electrical appliances, aircraft, and more. Copper is currently priced at around $6.20 a pound, but this could go up with increased demands coming from data centers, which a single data center can use a whopping 2,177 tons of copper. Well, don't tell a meth head about that one. That's about $30 million worth of copper, which isn't chump change for poor countries like the Congo. The war in Congo is unlikely to go away anytime soon, and copper prices could make the war nastier for both sides of the conflict. Thank you for listening. New episodes appear weekly at ryanbeth.substack.com, where you can also find the companion intelligence briefing. Sources are cited using embedded and active links to ensure transparency and replication. All right, I'm done. The recording. Recording stopped. So now I can talk to you guys for a little while. Now that I'm finished with this recording, oh my God. You know, this is actually a significant amount of work. Yes, I would call the M23 terrorists. Congolese terrorists, absolutely. Yeah, I would not call them nice guys. That's for darn sure. I have a podcast at 9, but I gotta save that one. You know what? I'm gonna have a party, Gus. Yeah, I have a podcast at 9. Tech question: when is Canada getting invaded? Canada's not gonna get invaded. You know, it's kind of interesting because in some ways, like, yeah, Canada was kind of screwing the U.S. on some trade stuff, but the way we responded probably wasn't the best, you know. And the tourism loss. You know what, guys, I'm gonna go crack a window. I'm gonna go smoke. I'll be right back. So you know, I have a smoke eater that sucks all the smoke out, but I don't like. Oh hell, where's my lighter? I did all that, and I don't have my lighter. Oh, I found it. Be right back. Got it. I actually tried to get sponsored by a smoke eater, and I tried to get Ave True to High Mars was a gold idea for a shirt. I was talking about when is Canada getting invaded. I do not believe Canada is going to be invaded anytime soon. You know, we made a lot of mistakes with what we were doing regarding Canada and trade policy. Like we have a major issue with aluminum now. I'm actually I'm editing a video right now about pig iron, which is like absolutely insane. The amount of how little, I should say, pig iron that we have remaining in the United States. You know, like let me ask you this: like, how many? I can take a poll of the 352 people watching here. How many people know somebody who works in a mine? Like, nobody works in a mine, right? But we're all talking about, oh my God, we need to. Someone said I need to open my membership on YouTube so we have green names. You know, I have been reluctant to do membership on YouTube because I am a little more. I prefer to push people over to Substack because YouTube gives too much money. Howdy, Ryan. Did you work at the Brits? I noticed the flag. I'm from Northern Ireland. I even drink tea. I drink Blanton's and I eat Walker's biscuits. But I have worked with the Brits before, yes. Will Djibouti receive F-35s? Boy, that's a good question. In order to enter the F-35 program, you need to have a lot of things going on in your country. You need to have the infrastructure to support it. And also, like, when you look at Djibouti, like, what threats do they have that would require the F-35? I actually don't know much about Djibouti's Air Force. I would imagine they probably have old Soviet jets or maybe French jets. Let me look. I keep losing my my mouse keyboard here. Let's see. Djibouti Air Force. Yeah, they have Mi-35, Cessnas. Yeah, they have a Bayraktar. Yeah, they don't actually own any aircraft. They have Cessna 208s. They have the Harbin Y-10. Yeah, they don't really have any jet fighters or any kind of fighter aircraft whatsoever. The Djibouti Air Force has a total strength of 360 personnel. Yep. Why did Canada drop their order of F-35s from 80 to 18? I think it's actually 16. Well, I mean, I did a whole video about that, and I can tell you that when you look at when you look at the deal that was made between the U.S. and Canada, Canada was very justifiably afraid that the United States was going to cut off defensive supplies for Canada. So Canada was rightfully concerned about whether they should buy an American fighter or not. And there's a couple of issues. The fact is that the F-35 has capabilities that are absolutely insane, that no other fighter in the world can even touch. That being said, Canada is already committed to buying, I believe, 16 F-35s in their initial tranche, which is always a weird word to use, tranche. But Canada's already, let's see, today at 8:10. I gotta grab this waveform audio and kind of listen to it for a sec. But yeah, I mean, it was a very justifiable fear. They didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket when it came to the United States.
Running, and I'm gonna have quick time.
All right, so last time my editor was like upset because let's see, global warning audio. Global warning 11 audio. Last time my editor was upset, he said there was a buzzing sound. His ears must be absolutely amazing because I didn't hear a buzzing sound, but All right, so back to Canada. Yeah, I did a whole video about it, but basically, when you look at Canada's needs, right? They need to defend a large swath of country, and they also have commitments to NATO. So I personally think like the F-15EX would probably be an excellent fighter aircraft for Canada. Just winterize, call it the CF-15EX. But I don't know if Canada really needs the bomb truck capability that the F-15EX has. So, Canada was looking at the Gripen as a possible low-cost alternative, which is a 2.5 generation fighter. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Gripen. The F-35 has more capability. The Gripen has enough capability. They can't go wrong with either one of those things. It's just that one has more capability than the other and can be upgraded over the years. So that's kind of a long answer to a short question. What are your thoughts on Poland? I liked when I was in Gdansk, you could still smoke indoors in some places in bars. I like that. Hello from Australia. If Canada doesn't want to buy those F-35s, Israel will take them. They'll probably have to gut them. They'd probably have to gut them from the inside out if those were going to be sent to Israel. Because Israel is kind of weird. Like, I don't think there is an original bolt in all of... I don't think there's a single original component in the F-35I. I think Israel pretty much took everything out of the F-35I and kind of made it to its own specifications. So I don't see Israel grabbing those jets. Yeah, both can be upgraded. But yeah, you're right. A Gripen in the air is worth 3 F-35s that are stuck somewhere in Fort Worth, right? Why aren't we seeing more drone carriers? I can tell you that. If we decided to if we thought that drone carriers were a good idea, we would already have them available. And kind of we have drone carriers because every ship can become a drone carrier. The Fire Scout is one example of that. Like Fire Scout is a helicopter drone that's used on Navy destroyers and the littoral combat ship, Fire Scout UAV. But I guess one of the big issues is that using drones that drop micro munitions for long range strikes, it's just not feasible right now. Just because you might not be able to penetrate enemy air defenses with a drone. What brand cigars? Right now I'm smoking a Partagas Black Label. Let's see. What else we got here? Why is Trump interested in Greenland? You guys need to watch my freaking videos. I explained why. So, what am I doing up so early? I'm up early every day. I'm up at 5 in the morning every day. I'm up at 5 in the morning. I typically do. I hurt my foot about 3 years ago, and I've just finally gotten the treatment I need to get my Achilles tendon working again. So I used to walk 5 miles in the morning on a treadmill, and now I did my first quarter-mile run, just getting my Achilles tendon back in order. But I had to get that fixed before I could run again. But I'm always up at like 5 in the morning. Mention in your past video, I CENTCOM can't lie or hide about your casualties, but I cannot find your video. I don't know. I can't find it either. I'm pretty sure I said it in something. Can we really trust Israel as an ally? Well, I mean, can any country trust anyone else? I mean, we can trust them with certain things, but countries are always gonna look out for their best interests, right? So, you always, even allies spy on each other, and even allies are looking out for their own best interests. So, can you trust them? I mean, trust but verify, right? Okay, I'm letting my editor know. Okay, I made the changes, and I live streamed the recording, included them in the drive. All right, what else we got here? Can you trust Israel as an ally? I did that. Is Ukraine, obviously Ukraine's a mess. Yes, Ukraine is a mess, ignore that. Coincidence, EU put Iran on the terrorist list in January? I actually didn't know that the EU put Iran on the terror list in January, but if that was the case, I wonder what took them so long. They've been... it's funny. I should probably do a video about this, but Iran is like the cause of all the world's problems. Like Iran and Russia. But like just having a weakened Iran would be freaking great because at least for the Middle East, like they cause so many freaking problems. And they've been causing problems since the 1980s in Lebanon. Let me tell you something. I was alive in 1979 when the hostages were taken. And in fact, I even remember, true story, when when the hostages were released in 1980, so October 1980, I was in like preschool or kindergarten, And I remember, like, all of our kindergarten teachers went outside and formed a circle around the flagpole and they sang "God Bless America." True story. True story. When the hostages were released. And, ever since then, we've realized, like, that was kind of when we first realized, like, oh, wow, these guys are freaking crazy, the Iranians. And, what we've seen in Lebanon just kind of proves it. Now these guys want to build a freaking nuclear weapon to cause the end of the world so that way the Mahdi can reappear. Like, we're not dealing... it's funny. I'd like to say we're not dealing with rational people. We are dealing with rational people. It's just, it's their definition of what is rational. Israel is an unsinkable aircraft carrier that can be relied to balance power in the region. Yeah, I could say that. In theory, would it be beneficial to make Iran swear on Allah as part of the agreement? No. Any more information on that oil leak in Kharg Island? No, because we're not really getting satellite images and I can't buy anything. And it takes weeks to get approved by satellite companies to buy their stuff. But they want to make sure that that you're not like a bad actor. Do you usually live stream? I do not usually live stream. I used to, but I kind of stopped doing that because I got so busy. But I just wanted to do this because I was going to run Global Warning, and I thought, you know what? Maybe this will get more people to watch Global Warning. The podcast. So, let's see. Do you think Iran will attack the BTC pipeline? They can try. Yeah, they can try. You have to understand that like every single time they fire a weapon system, they're burning their location. Can the president take a trip to Iran? I mean, I suppose he can. Whether the Secret Service will let them go, you don't know. Nighttime kiddo. Ryan, you say your Army career is mediocre. What do you mean? I mean, I didn't do anything. So someone asked, Ryan, you say your Army career is mediocre. Yeah. I was never like Special Forces, Army Ranger, Airborne Ranger, Space Shuttle Door Gunner. Was never one of those. So someone said, Ryan, you mentioned in your past videos the Army can't hire, lied about casualties. Yeah, I can talk about that in a sec. But it was just a normal career. Like I didn't really do anything special. I sat in a Humvee. We did stuff. I went to Iraq. Hey, drive down this road. We want to see who blows you up. But like I never did anything all that special. Honestly, a lot of careers are like that. But that might be one of the reasons why I survived 20 years and never really got injured. So someone asked me why the U.S. Army can't hide casualties. So, one thing is that whenever there is a U.S. Army casualty, the notifications usually go out immediately or at least within 24 hours. And like one of the things is something called SGLI, Servicemen's Group Life Insurance. So the Army can't hide the number of dead that it has because as soon as someone dies, the SGLI, your Servicemen's Group Life Insurance, is going to be activated, right? And so that money has to get paid out. And I would certainly imagine there's some sort of case of insurance fraud if the Army was hiding casualties and, all of a sudden the payments to SGLI stopped but the soldier wasn't declared dead. Like there's no way to like hide that, right? Someone has to make those payments into SGLI if the soldier is still alive. So yeah, you can't just hide war dead. You know, once someone dies, the family is usually notified fairly quickly. So all these people saying, "Oh no, the U.S. has lost hundreds," like you would know that within days, right? Like that's the kind of thing the U.S. Army or the New York Times. That would be like crack cocaine to the New York Times if the Army was hiding dead, and there would be really no way of doing it anyway. Let's see. Is it true Dubai is fighting Iran alone right now? They did fight Dubai. Well, really, it would be the UAE, right? The UAE. Oh, thank you for that. The UAE did fight. They launched their own attacks against Iran. I don't know if I don't think they're still doing it, but the UAE, they were hit with over 2,800 missiles or drones from Iran. That's more than Israel. Of course, it's shorter range, right? So yeah, I can see the UAE be like, let's, yeah. One of the things that like a lot of like that freaking idiot Professor Ping Pong, that freaking Chinese dude who was in Canada and decided to move back to Canada to beat his kid and now calls himself a freaking professor and teaches to an empty classroom. That screaming idiot, Professor Zhang. I have more degrees than that motherfucker. But what's funny is that guy said, "Oh, Iran is going to cause the whole Arab world to turn against the United States." Yeah. But people said, "Oh, how come you don't debunk that guy?" That motherfucker debunked himself. Like, I could have told you it's not going to happen. The funny thing is that most of the Arab world realizes what a threat Iran is, and plus Iran is mostly Shia Muslim, like 90% Shia Muslim, and 90% of the Muslims in the world are Sunni, and there's no love lost between those two religions. It's not really like Catholic and Protestants fighting, but it's close. Right, and I would say the Sunnis barely consider the Shia to be Muslims, whereas the Shia do consider the Sunnis to be Muslims. What is a practical way to combat disinformation efforts for friends and families to fall victim to? Who would you consider targets of misinformation as casualties? I wouldn't consider them casualties, but I would consider the disinformation practitioners to be combatants. So to combat disinformation, I mean, it's really tough. I mean, honestly, with your family, I mean, you can show them evidence, but a lot of times people just kind of believe what they want to believe. I don't know how much you can counter it even by showing like alternate truth. Maybe the best way of doing it is just whenever something is identified as misinformation or disinformation by a social media company, it gets flagged with a big red box. And then maybe eventually people will stop trusting that particular source. Greetings from Italy. Ciao. Ciao, Johnny. You think Iran will try to sabotage Alberta oil fields? Man, I don't know if they can get there. What do you think about Pakistan shielding Iranian aircraft from the outbreak of the war? I think like 2 C-130s landed in Pakistan. I wouldn't call that shielding. Like those aircraft could have been there on a routine flight, and then they land in Pakistan, and we're not going to go after them while they're there. I don't know if that's shielding or whether that's just they happened to land there during training, and then the next day there was a war. What's your morning cigar? I typically don't smoke cigars in the morning, but I have a podcast soon, and I just finished my I know, the Chinese experts, right? Cosmic Butler, there's Chinese experts all over YouTube. that was like that whole Asian silver guy. Oh, I haven't really seen them much anymore. It seems like maybe YouTube took an axe to those fake AI Asian silver guy accounts. What else we got here? Can airdropping crates of firearms on Iran to arm civilians be a viable strategy? I should do a video about that. We tried that in World War II with the Liberator pistol, and I don't think there was ever a single successful case of the Liberator pistol being used. The whole idea was that you would use this Liberator pistol to take a German soldier's weapon. But it just, usually dropping crates of arms and ammunition onto people who don't necessarily know how to use them is not a good idea. Now, every Iranian is, at least every male Iranian joins the army. They're conscripted. So most Iranians likely know how to use a rifle. But, I guess we could do that. I think that without special forces jumping in and helping train people, then you're just sending people to slaughter. If you're using your own oil production, why are gas prices so high? Because oil is fungible. Because if I'm in Texas and I'm pumping oil out of the ground and someone's offering me $150 a barrel, I'm going to go to the person offering me $150 a barrel, not necessarily sell it in America. On October 23rd, 1983, my unit was alerted for Operation Urgent Fury. We initially thought the alert was for the barracks bombing that took place in Lebanon. Yeah, that was Grenada, right? Urgent Fury. A podcast would be better if you focus on just one topic. Yeah, what my goal for the podcast was, to have I'm just finding all of these little news items that I'm like, oh man, that would be a good video. But it's too much. It's too much for a short video, and it's not, it would only be interesting to a certain amount of people. So I wanted to take all these little nuggets that I found while doing research and just put them into one place and get it done in around 10 minutes. And that kind of became the Global Warning podcast. Did I go to any schools in the Army? I did. What schools did I go to? I went to, they call it different now. I went to PLDC, BNOC, and ANOC. I think it's called Warrior Leaders Course, and now Advanced Leaders Course, and thanks for the $20 Canadian, man. Appreciate that. Il Waro. And I went to actually the two best classes I went to were when I was an instructor. I went to TAITC and I went to ITC and TAITC, which are probably called something different now. But these two classes taught me how to be an instructor. And I would encourage anyone who wants to make the U.S. Army their career to go to instructor school, to go to ITC or TITC, because that class taught me how to construct a class. It taught me how people learn, and I use that today. What is your terminal learning objective? Right? At the end of the day, what thing do you want your audience to learn? And also just how to speak, how to present yourself, how to use your command voice, how to project your voice, stuff like that. Wall Street Journal just announced inflation at 3.8%. Hey, gas prices are up. What has the Kurdish been doing? I thought they would do cross-border incursions. I think the Kurds lost our phone number. And I am not surprised that the Kurds lost our phone number, because we have treated them like crap. We have taken advantage of the Kurds for, God's 1990, 40 years? 30 years? We've taken advantage of the Kurds for 30 years. It's back after the first Gulf War. We were like, oh yeah, we'll support you if you rebel. And then they rebelled and we didn't support them. Is leaving Putin in power, so you need the government to step in, control the oil. Yeah, that's very scary. Advice work on podcast thumbnails. I like the podcast thumbnail as it is. Is leaving Putin in power strategically advantageous? I mean, it's the devil you know, right? The one advantage, and like, you know, I didn't realize this until I started research for my video on pig iron. So I have a video coming out hopefully today about pig iron. And pig iron is an industrial input into steel. And people talk about how, oh my God, we need to make more Patriot missiles, and we do. But we only have essentially 5 pig iron mines in the entire country. And Russia was a major supplier of pig iron to the U.S. And essentially, we can't even make steel anymore. We just like exported all that dirty business stuff to other countries, Russia, China, India. And, you know, when Trump got into power, you know, I thought, like, me and a lot of people thought, oh my God, this guy's freaking crazy. Why is he treating Ukraine like Ukraine's the problem? And the answer is that, like, he doesn't necessarily care about Ukraine. He doesn't care about Russia. He cares about the U.S. And when you look at the U.S.'s supply of basic raw material imports, we lost a major supplier of raw materials when we sanctioned Russia. And that is an issue, especially fighting China, because China has a lot of rare earths. And, you know, we have a lot of rare earths too. We just can't get to them because every time you open up a mine, people start protesting. And I get it. I don't want trucks rumbling through my town, making my drinking water unsafe. But we need to figure out what that balance is between pulling stuff out of the ground and importing it in from other countries. Because we thought, you know, for the longest time, we were like, oh, our economy has evolved past steel. You know, we built apps now. Turns out we need steel too. You know, pretty darn important. I don't know if you've been browsing combat footage recently, but the IDF started using cheap FPVs. I think this will make the IDF more effective against Hezbollah. I mean, yes and no. Like, you know, one of the things I've said about the M7 rifle is, like, I think the M7 in some ways is a solution in search of a problem, because the idea is the M7 can kind of reach out to 800 meters and penetrate a barrier or penetrate body armor. But in reality, you have this, if someone's 800 meters away, why don't you use an FPV drone? Right? Then you can keep your 5.56 rifles. So I think that FPV drones are a tool, and Israel should definitely use them for situations where it makes sense to use that tool. Are they going to make them more effective against Hezbollah? I mean, it's another tool in the toolkit. Yeah, one of the most valuable knowledge I got in engineering college is those who can present information well will succeed. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. You know, I think that one advantage I had over a lot of other people in engineering is that, you know, I wasn't like a little, you know, I wasn't afraid to make eye contact with people. You know, I had no problem talking to people. I was like the James Bond of software engineers or something, and that's why I became a software architect so quickly. And I was just Accenture was sending me to all these customer sites to essentially talk the customer down from the ledge. I was the cooler, you know, when the customer wanted to jump, they'd send Ryan Macbeth, and I'll fix the problem. And then I would look at their issue, and then I would call back to Boston or wherever the software engineering team was and be like, hey, this customer has a problem. How do I fix this? And they would tell me how to fix it. And I would go and I would fix it. And people would go, oh my God, Ryan's amazing. Send him again. I didn't do a damn thing. I just called the right person because I knew everybody and everybody liked it. I will tell you, I consider this one of the reasons I was successful in my military career was that I could run and everybody liked me. That's always been a thing. Everybody likes me. Wouldn't China wait out Trump's presidency for launching a Taiwan invasion? I would. If I was going to invade, I would do it in 2028 during the election season. Let's see here. Thoughts on the Victory Day parade. What are your thoughts on Xi's Trump meeting this week? I don't really have any thoughts. I think that we're going into this with China kind of looking at the meter of cheap oil that's left in their reserves, and they're getting a little scared because they just suddenly lost 20% of their freaking oil. I think it was 20% of their oil and I think 30% of their natural gas. So, yeah, that's not too great. It's not too great for China, so they want this war in Iran to end. What are your thoughts on AI apps advertised to children with Chinese origins? Dude, I wouldn't let any software from China come into the U.S. Are NATO states actively trying to prevent Russia from breaking into small nuclear states? I don't think so. Even if Russia collapses and breaks into feuding warlord states, the permissive action links are still held in Moscow. Those are the things that allow... The codes are still held in Moscow, and a nuclear weapon won't explode correctly without the correct codes. So, just having a nuclear weapon doesn't really mean much. You probably could sell that plutonium, but do you have the expertise to refine that plutonium? Right? And Sum of All Fears was able to get away with it because it was an older weapon. Are NATO states... Okay, what are your thoughts on AI apps? Wouldn't China wait out Trump's presidency? We're building a new steel plant here in Louisiana. Good. That sounds like a great place to do it because you probably have a lot of people who are used to blue-collar work, and you're probably close to the Mississippi River, and you're close to the Gulf of America. So, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea. I work in defense manufacturing for a minute, so all of our raw metals are tested here. Well, but not smelted here. Yeah, that's an issue. U.S. is now the backup safe house for Oban-linked fugitives. I wouldn't know. Australia and Brazil can supply all the iron and rail earth you need. Yeah, that was kind of an issue. I mean, when we treat our allies like crap, we can't be surprised when they turn around on us. M7 is too heavy. It's anti-female soldier. Grow stronger. One of my favorite lines in the movie. Actually, one of my favorite lines in any movie. So there's this movie called The 13th Warrior, and Antonio Banderas was in it. And in the movie, he was this Arab poet who was working in the Sultan's court. And I think he had an affair or he had sex with one of the Sultan's concubines. And as punishment, the Sultan sent him to live with the Northmen, like the Vikings in Norway. And there was this scene in the movie where the Vikings were about to attack these enemies. And he asks for a sword. And the Vikings give him this big-ass Viking sword. And he goes, I cannot wield it. And the Viking says, grow stronger. That is the best advice I think I ever saw in a movie. Grow stronger. China just started refined fuel product exports after initially banning it. All evidence indicates China is better prepared than the U.S. and allies. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, they don't have as much extraction, although China is starting to get shale. What about Turkey's role in NATO for the foreseeable future? What about it? They're a major NATO partner. Ryan, you talked about information war in your recent video. Does it affect kinetic actions during war? It should. We don't. I mean, I've always said that we should consider disinformation actors to be combatants in the same vein as an enemy with a rifle, because that adversary that's using information war to change someone's opinion, I mean, that can be just as effective as a bullet, right? Hey, go glue yourself to the side of a ship, you know, like that. That's kind of messed up there, right? So yeah, I've often said that we have to consider information warfare practitioners to be combatants. What else we got here? China. I have about 8 minutes until I have to do a podcast. What is your opinion on John Kiriakou? Guy, the guy went to jail for doing the wrong thing. He got out of jail. He couldn't get a job. And so now he's essentially traveling around making money by offering anti-U.S. views. And that's, I mean, it's a shitty thing to do. He shouldn't have done that. You know, I understand he couldn't get a job, but he's basically turned being anti-American into a business. You know, I actually have a great John Kiriakou imitation. All right, want to see my John Kiriakou imitation? I got to put down my cigar because he wouldn't smoke a cigar. So what I found out is that you can't ride a zebra. And I said, well, why can't you ride a zebra? And they said, well, because zebras are Al-Qaeda. And I said, that's news to me. That's my little John Kiriakou imitation. That's how he acts on every single podcast. I would like him to go away. I don't wish any ill on him. I would just like him to just kind of fade into the background and just stop spreading misinformation. But hey, even lying is free speech. He has every right. The only thing he probably should do is register as a foreign agent if he's taking money. What is your opinion? Let's see here. Someone asked me, is it good or bad for China if the U.S.-Iran conflict gets stretched, considering the U.S. is getting sucked into it? We're not getting sucked into it. We can do this indefinitely. There's nothing getting sucked in here. The U.S. has, the U.S. can kind of keep up this blockade indefinitely. And oil prices will stabilize. There'll be a new normal, but China's going to have to find alternate sources for energy. How well do you think Andrew will do in the military? I mean, it's such a big company. It depends on what product you're talking about. Is Edward Snowden a traitor or a hero? One of the major reasons I don't like Edward Snowden is that he says he's a cybersecurity expert and the motherfucker doesn't even have a degree. Like, why don't you get the number of degrees I have before calling yourself a cybersecurity expert? The guy's a SharePoint administrator. I would consider him a traitor, yeah. I would. He thought he was doing the right thing because he had a handler. He had a Russian handler that convinced him that he was doing the right thing. But yeah, I would call him a traitor, yeah. I mean, the guy fled to Russia. You don't flee to Russia if you're a good guy. If you're doing the right thing, you don't flee to Russia. You know, what you're doing should stand on its own, right? What's your gut feeling about what's going to happen next in Iran? I think eventually the regime is going to collapse. It might be in 2 weeks, might be in 2 months, but you know, no country can survive having its revenue cut like that. How about BRICS? What about BRICS? It's a bunch of countries that don't sell anything to anyone else except China. So calm the ego down, homie. You get a computer science degree and call me. Are we going to deploy more troops near Iran? I don't know. Are we going to make small incursions? There's really no advantage to that. How long do you think before the Iran war will cause a gas shortage in the USA, Canada, and Europe? I mean, it's causing a shortage right now. But eventually it'll become the new normal. We'll all get used to it. Snowden did a documentary where he showed software spying on phones that required rooting, presented as anyone who touches your phone. Yeah. What do you think about the U.S. loosening ITAR restrictions for American engineers working in Ukrainian defense tech startups? It's probably not a bad idea. I was actually contacted yesterday by someone who said, hey, you want to be the CEO of a drone company? And I'm like, prank caller, because it was a drone company that was affiliated with Ukraine. And like the export regulations and all that, like it's always you always have to be careful who you talk to and what you're saying when you're talking to somebody from a foreign country. What about the enriched uranium? How will they extract it? I mean, ideally, we make a deal with Iran and we say, we will give you back your country, but we're coming in, we're taking all this uranium from underneath this collapsed mountain, and then you go and do it. Has Tucker Carlson registered as a foreign agent? I do not believe so. We have masters in nutrition. Well, shit, that's something I need. Under every interview with Lindsey Graham, I see comments calling him a traitor to America. Could this be a coordinated bot attack? I guess you're referring to Edward Snowden. I don't know who you're referring to. USA whistleblower. I mean, you do get, I can tell you this, when you're in Congress, you do get sheets that explain like, hey, these are the talking points that we have to, these are the talking points that we have to follow. All right, I'm about to go into this live stream. Do you guys want, I'm about to go into this, Riverside conversation. You want me to stay on? Magic spells. Andrew Bustamante sounds like he's full of it. No, he's the real thing. Andrew Bustamante is the real thing. The CIA didn't really perform a coup in Iran. And essentially I think that was more of a British thing. The British wanted a certain amount of oil, and that was in southern Iran. And I will tell you that when you look at all the world's troubles, the British caused a lot of them. All right, hey buddy. All right, I'm on a live stream right now.
Yeah, I'm on your live stream.
Yeah, all right, we can do this with the live stream, and we can do your thing. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, let's get started, guys. I'm gonna be leaving the chat, and I'm gonna be talking with Alexander from Ukraine. So let's hit it. Let me. Where am I going? This way. All right.
I can start my recording.
Start it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Hello everyone, my name is Alex, and today I'm sitting here with Ryan Macbeth, a SINT analyst, cybersecurity expert, and content creator, who actually right now sitting on his live stream. Ryan, hello.
It's like live stream inception. Yeah, I got my SIGINT shirt on today. This meeting could have been SIGINT. This is like my favorite shirt. I think this thing is so creative because wouldn't you rather just like live stream? Wouldn't you rather just grab the meeting notes afterwards through SIGINT rather than sit through the meeting? Or
Also, all viewers who sitting right now on your live stream can be the first viewers of this video.
yeah, right.
That one gonna be published tomorrow. Okay, Ryan, my first question: in your analysis of the events surrounding the hypothetical assassination of Kennedy, you mentioned that figures like Tucker Carlson help normalize hostile narratives by amplifying them after foreign intelligence service have seeded the first name.
Yeah.
In your view, do they do this consciously as influence agents, or is it simply the result of feeding the social media beast in pursuit of views and engagement?
So I can tell you this. I don't think Tucker Carlson is taking orders from Russia, but I do think that he has noticed when I come up with this controversial content, I get reliable views. So I think they're just feeding the social media beast. It's tough because when you have to put out a certain amount of content every week in order to pay your mortgage, right? Like if I don't make money online, I don't eat. It is very, very difficult to be ethical. And there's some lines I don't cross. My agent, and I have an agent, my agent has come to me asking me to do stuff for betting sites, like gambling sites, and I've said no. Like I don't gamble. I'll play craps once in a while when I go to the casino, but I'll come with $100, and when I'm done, I leave. Right? But I won't do gambling. I won't do supplements. I won't do some AI tools, like AI tools that are actually helpful. Yeah, I'll promote them if I use them and I found them helpful. But I won't. I won't do some kinds of ads. But if you're not particularly ethical, what's funny is I was actually asked to do an ad for a supplement brand that was sponsored by Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, and I had to. I said no. I said no to that particular sponsorship. But if you're not ethical and you have to make your rent, I mean, Tucker Carlson has a whole staff. He has to pay them, right? And he doesn't have a job anymore, so his livelihood is his partnership with that tobacco company that he shoves in his mouth, and his show, his TCM network, right? That's his livelihood. So yeah, he's going to be controversial if he thinks it gets clicks.
Yeah, and how do you assess the risk that influential American commentators may end up echoing Russian narratives on their show, effectively becoming tools in a narrative war where fact-checking cannot keep pace with the speed of belief propagation?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so what's kind of weird about America is that even lying is protected speech, right? I don't necessarily know if I want that to be any different. But I also believe that we should consider foreign actors who spread disinformation to be enemy combatants, and we should treat them accordingly. And I've never shied away from that. We should consider them combatants. And if that means dropping a bomb on some teenager in his bedroom, then that's what it means. Don't do that then, right? If you don't want to be a combatant, don't pick up that keyboard. It's really that simple. Now, we can't do that to Americans, but what we can do is shame them. You know, back during segregation, I don't know how much you know about the U.S., but God, from essentially the Civil War, the American Civil War until the 1960s and a little bit afterwards, African Americans, especially in the South, were treated differently. And one of the ways that we bred that out of the culture, it's still in the culture in some ways, is through shame. When somebody says something racist, say, hey, that isn't cool. I don't like that. And I think what we kind of need to do with these disinformation actors is eliminate the incentive. It's to make them feel shame. We need to make shame great again. And to say to someone, you know what? I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't like the way you're saying it. And I guess for a while that was what we called canceling people. But that doesn't necessarily mean deplatforming. It just makes them feel the consequences of their actions. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah, that's right. And Ryan, if you were planning to fight Tucker Carlson, which combat sport would you choose? Classic boxing, kickboxing, or MMA? Or it's up to you?
I would choose pistols, but maybe we should bring back dueling. I mean, that would solve so many problems if we brought back dueling. People would stop saying stupid stuff. Like, all right, I'll duel you. And I would win. Not just because I'm a good shot with a pistol, but I've got nothing to live for. You know, like, there's so many guys who are like, they have families and stuff like that. You know, they wouldn't want to duel me because they know I don't care. Right? I'm either gonna die in the duel, or I'm gonna die 30 years from now of a heart attack. Maybe tomorrow of a heart attack. You never know. Right? Yeah, look, we've got what? We've got 80 trips around the sun if we're lucky. And there's some people who try to freaking live forever. You're not going to live forever. Maybe it was better back in the 1960s when you retired at 65 and died of a heart attack at 67. My dad is 86 years old, 87 years old. You know, quality of life isn't that great. So, like, we're all running around trying to live. Like, man, maybe you should try to live. You know, there's something to say about quality of life. But, God, there's so many people who are just so obsessed with living, you know? So, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe we should bring back dueling. I would clean up.
Given your background in military intelligence, do you think he might try to use information jiu-jitsu, turning your own strength against you, or your pistol may be harder?
I've never actually debated anyone. I was actually asked about that. I was asked to go on a debate. I think it was on Piers Morgan. Someone said, oh, do you want to come on Piers Morgan to do a debate? And I said, I don't need to debate anyone. I'm right. Like that's, I'm going to say, look, people pay me money to give them an accurate intelligence assessment. That's one of the other ways I make my living. It's by receiving money from people that want information so they can make a good decision. And, the thing I told this producer from the Piers Morgan show was, listen, I'm going to tell you, I don't debate. You want me to invite me on and learn about weapon systems? I'll be more than happy to tell you about weapon systems. But I don't debate anyone. What I said is true. There's a likelihood of it. We can debate like the likelihood of what I said being true or not. Because when you use ICD-203, you put things into buckets of unlikely, likely, very likely, and so on, right? But you can listen to me or you can not listen to me. But if you listen to me, you're more likely to have a positive outcome. And I've very rarely been wrong about things. So I don't debate. So if Tucker Carlson wants to debate me, there's no debate. I'm right. It's the likelihood of how I am right might vary, but there's no debate. The intelligence is what it is. The quality of the intelligence could be debated, but the outcome usually isn't.
It's true, but Tucker Carlson, if you listen us right now, I want to say this to you directly. You should see how I train on a punching bag with Putin's face on it. It's a disgusting feeling watching you push Russian narratives and seemingly work in a favor of Kremlin interests for money and influence. So, if you were watching this video, know this. I challenge you to a fight for your constant excuses for Russian propaganda, for the content you spread, for acting like an amplifier for narratives that help a regime responsible for war in my country and destruction. If you're a real man, leave a comment under this video and we'll agree on the place, the rules, and the format of the fight. Okay, next question.
Yeah.
On the Ukraine Strange and the May 9 Parrot, inspired by my yesterday interview with Jake Bro. Jake Bro argued that Ukraine's kinetic sanctions against Russian refineries and oil infrastructure, such as strikes near Perm, have been far more effective than Western diplomatic pressure. Do you agree that Ukraine is successful in neutralizing Russia as a gas station masquerading as a country?
They haven't been completely successful, but they're certainly on their way. And I think one of the big issues is that a lot of Russia's extraction is using Western equipment. You use Western equipment to extract that oil and gas from the ground, and slowly those rigs are being taken apart. Right, they're breaking down. And so now you're either using counterfeit parts or you have to manufacture some kind of replacement part, which I guess would be a counterfeit part. And those rigs haven't been updated. Their software hasn't been updated in about 4 years either. You have any idea what I could do with that from a cybersecurity perspective? I could have all sorts of fun if you haven't updated your software in years. So I think that Ukraine has been successful mainly because when you hit an oil storage or an oil refining facility, it makes it a lot harder to repair when you're using counterfeit parts, right? Or you have to manufacture those parts yourself. And Russia doesn't really necessarily make those parts anymore. There's a huge machine tool problem in Russia. A lot of them are still using machine tools from the West that, again, haven't had a software update in X amount of years. And that's a big problem for them as well. So, when you're dealing with... So one interesting thing, a lot of people say, oh, they're hitting Russia's oil infrastructure. It's harder for Russia to collect taxes on that. Yes and no, because Russia kind of changed their laws so that the oil is taxed when it leaves the ground, not necessarily when it's sold. So that makes things a little bit different. But when you look at the efforts that Ukraine has put into destroying Russian oil and gas infrastructure, it doesn't help, right? Because now you have to choose. If you are a machine tool company and you're making parts, you have to choose, do I make a part for Russia's oil infrastructure? Do I make a part for a Russian tank? Do I make a part for a Russian aircraft? Right? Because you're gonna send that money you're gonna send that bid to the highest bidder, right? Whoever offers you the most rubles for your product, you're gonna service. So when you blow up a refinery and all of a sudden that refinery needs spare parts to rebuild the refinery, it goes to a machine tool company, a tooling, a manufacturing company, and says, hey, I need a part. And that company says, okay, well, you have to get in line because I have these orders from the Russian Air Force. I have these orders from a Russian elevator company that I have to fill. I have these orders for, so on. So it just makes it harder. And I think you could see what you can see is inflation, where it makes it harder and harder to purchase the parts that you need to run your economy because you have a limited number of machine tools all chasing more money.
Yeah, and we together with Jake also discussed the disturbing contrast during the May 9 parades. While North Korean troops marched in Moscow, provincial cities displayed battalions on crutches, hundreds of thousands of wounded veterans. Uh, how does such visible evidence of massive losses, reportedly over
Yeah.
300,000 dead, affect the Kremlin's ability to sell the public on a manufactured victory?
It's tough, right? It's tough because even though Russia has tried to limit the amount of information that the public is getting through apps like by banning Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, and trying to force everybody over to their Max app, which they have total control over, people talk. And you can't hide the fact that your neighbor or your uncle went to Ukraine and never came back. So at some point, and I hate to get all William Spaniel here, which, by the way, you should watch Lines on Maps. It's an excellent geopolitics channel that I don't do geopolitics. William Spaniel is excellent at this, but you need to look at like the amount of money that Russia is offering new recruits right now outweighs the risk that a new recruit believes they will suffer by entering Ukraine and fighting there. And at some point, that amount of money is going to be more than the risk capacity of the recruit. So I'll give you one example. If I were in Gaza right now, you could not pay me enough money to launch a drone. Right? I guess about 2 years ago, someone said, "Oh my God, these journalists were killed when Israel killed these journalists who launched a drone." You couldn't pay me enough money to launch a drone in Gaza because as soon as that thing goes up, the Israelis are going to get the telemetry on that drone and they're going to follow that signal back and they're going to drop a bomb on you. Because if you're launching a drone, you're probably a bad guy, right? So the amount of money that I'd be willing to accept to launch a drone in Gaza is essentially zero. Now, the amount of money that I would accept to, I don't know, let's say I were a younger man and I decided to re-enlist in the military, the amount of money that I would accept to go over to the Middle East right now and perhaps deal with Iranian drones, yeah, that would be significantly lower because I know I'm fairly well protected. So right now, there's Russians who think, all right, the amount of money I'm going to get, I believe that my level of risk is low enough that I'll be able to use that money or my family will be able to use that money. And when that risk goes above that amount of money that the government is willing to offer, you're going to start seeing a trickle of recruits. A lot fewer recruits are going to go. There will still be some who believe it's their patriotic duty to fight for the motherland, but for the most part, most people are motivated by self-interest, not necessarily patriotism. And there's a ceiling for that money, and we may have reached that. We may have reached that now, since recruiting seems to be trickling off.
Yeah, but we have seen reports about Russian soldiers surrendering for a Big Mac from McDonald's because of calorie shortages and terrible logistics.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how close is the Russian army to large-scale desertion if the glory of empire is losing to an ordinary gambler?
Desertion is tough. I think desertion in the Russian army is a lot tougher today than it was even 2 years ago. I would have to talk to the I Want to Live people to see how they're deserting, and that's because they can't necessarily go back, because if they go back, they'll be discovered and they'll be punished, and they can't necessarily go forward to surrender because they're under observation from drones, or at least from Russian drones. Someone's going to see them going across no man's land, and they'll say, "Hey, did we authorize an incursion? No? All right, blow that guy up." Right? So I think it's a lot tougher for Russians to self-surrender now than it was before, just because there's so many eyes around them. And as much as I would like to say, like, hey, uh, it would be great if the Russian army collapsed. I think that the collapse would have to be total and complete. Like if somehow they weren't getting paid for a couple of weeks, maybe you could see something. They haven't been paid, they haven't been fed. Because if you have a rifle and if you haven't been fed in a couple of days, pretty soon you're going to find some food. If you have a rifle and no food, pretty soon you're going to have some food. You're going to find it, you're going to steal it. You might steal from other soldiers, right? So it would have to be across the board. Like someone misses payroll. Like the Russian army can't make their payroll one month. And now guys are like, you know what? Screw this. We're not getting food. We're not getting paid. I'm done. That would be the nightmare scenario for Russia, but I don't know how close they are to that.
You have previously noted that Iran is divided between its elected civilian government and IRGC
Mm-hmm.
factions that may actively seek an apocalyptic confrontation. Do you believe that a cut of the head of the snake strategy is the only effective approach when dealing with a regime that does not respect international law?
So it's tough right now, right? Because they don't respect international law, but at the same time, you may have people in the Iranian government who are willing to make a deal, but we don't exactly know who's in charge of Iran right now. And the big fear is that you have IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who are fighting amongst themselves or jockeying for power, and they have the guns. So traditionally, civilian leadership tells the military what to do. The military says, okay, well, yes, we will do that thing. With the IRGC is essentially a criminal organization, almost like a mafia organization, that also just happens to be the religious component of their revolutionary army. So you could have people in the civilian government who are afraid of being killed by the IRGC, so they're gonna go along with what the IRGC says, and the IRGC might believe that they can hold out and kind of win, for lack of a better term, win this conflict, or at least outlast the United States, because they know that American midterm elections are coming up very, very soon. And gas prices are a major issue. There are Americans who are hurting right now, who, as it gets closer to the end of the month, they don't have enough money. The paycheck isn't lasting until the end of the month because gas prices are so high. And I think they believe that President Trump will back down. So essentially, this is a race between the Iranian government, which is losing between $450 to $500 million a day. Can they collapse, or President Trump decides to back down and say, all right, you know what, we quit, we go home? And I could see the Iranian government lasting another 2 weeks to 2 months. It's sooner or later you run out of money. And the question is, will Iran run out of money before President Trump runs out of resolve? That's the big question.
Yeah, right. And there were reports suggesting that Russia plans to supply Iran with thousands of upgraded drones. However, you expressed skepticism about such a deal because Russia itself desperately needs every available drone for attacks on Ukraine, while the Iranian real is effectively worthless.
Yeah.
Is this alliance truly as strong as propaganda portrays it? Or is it simply an attempt by weak regimes to prop each other amid financial collapse?
I don't particularly see Russia donating drones to Iran. And I say that because, Russia needs those drones for its own conflict. And also, what does Russia get out of that? A worthless real? Like, what are you gonna buy in reals? Um, Getting them there might be an issue. I mean, I suppose you could have a Russian flight that would take the drones there, but you can only send a limited amount of drones via air. Ideally, you want to send a ship, but that'll get blockaded. I guess you can do rail through Armenia, maybe. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how you physically ship the drones there unless you fly them on a cargo plane, which could be dangerous. So, Russia can say, I guess Tajikistan, maybe. I don't know which way Tajikistan is leaning right now. I guess rail over Tajikistan. Let me look at a map of Iran for a second. But, yeah, I mean, I think it would be extremely difficult for Russia to get weapon systems over there without a sea route. And, yeah, there's really no advantage in Iran doing so. So let's see, you got Turkmenistan, I said Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Yeah, I don't know how the drones get over there unless they're willing to go through Turkmenistan. Afghanistan, they don't have any rail. Pakistan, they're only sending food. Azerbaijan, they're friends with Iran, but I think Azerbaijan kind of came over to the U.S. side. Turkey, I don't think Turkey's going to let any Russian drones through. So, that's kind of a tough one. So, yeah.
In your videos, you openly say the United States, absolutely did not listen to Ukraine regarding active combat drone operations. What specific lessons from Ukrainian FPV drone operators are the most valuable for American intelligence, American military, and could they fundamentally reshape the ICR doctrine you helped build?
So, lessons from FPV drone operators, that's kind of a tough one. I think it's more lessons from being on the receiving end of drones, because I was just with the Marine Corps in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I attended an exercise where they launched some FPV drones, and we've learned plenty of lessons from Ukraine. I mean, the lesson to learn is we need to have small, cheap drones that we can manufacture quickly. So we've learned that lesson. That one was pretty easy. The other issue that is pretty glaring is the lessons learned from FPV drones. And we haven't really learned those lessons. We're still about 5 years behind where we need to be when it comes to knowing that the bad guys can send drones against us and how to react to those drones. That's not something that we're really tuned into right now. So we need to figure out what Ukraine is doing for counter drone stuff, and we need to employ that at the tactical and operational level to avoid becoming casualties by enemy drones.
Ukraine is already patrolling the skies over Mariupol and Melitopol with drones, while Russian air defenses struggle to protect even factories deep inside Samara.
Yeah.
Does this indicate that Ukraine has already achieved a technological victory at the tactical level, despite Russia's advantage in manpower?
I'm reluctant to say tactical victory. I would say they certainly may have overmatch in some cases. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Ukraine essentially built an entire drone and missile industry from scratch. But the only thing they can't really make is air defense. They're still kind of relying on the Patriot for that, although they've talked about manufacturing their own homegrown, cheaper air defense. Actually, I think based on like the SA-2 of all things. Like, and I think that's one of those things that, like, all right, look, we already know how to manufacture this thing. Let's see if we can improve it, right? So I think that the one factor that has helped Ukraine is that they are getting help from Europe when it comes to manufacturing. They are getting funding from Europe when it comes to manufacturing. So, you know, this is one of those things where you have Russia manufacturing things, but they have limited ways of funding and gathering resources, whereas Ukraine, essentially their resources are unlimited. So yeah, I think that Ukraine may have reached overmatch, although I wouldn't necessarily say they've reached they have dominance.
Mhm. On China's People's War at Sea, China is reportedly preparing to use civilian fishing fleets as a reserve military force. This resembles a human shield strategy at sea. What should the US response be in order to avoid falling into the trap of escalation by attacking ostensibly civilian vessels?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes you ask me questions and I don't know the answer to those questions. I mean, it's all a trap, right? Like I don't know. Can you ask that question a different way? I'm having a tough time with that one.
Yeah, okay. But you described a 2026 information warfare scenario in which Russia and China deploy synthetic weaknesses and AI generated content.
Yeah.
How effectively is Ukraine countering these methods today? And could Ukraine's strategy of transparency and real frontline footage be considered the best antidote to Russian disinformation?
That's actually a really good question. And I would say that one of the best antidotes for enemy disinformation is content. And we saw that in the conflict in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, because Hamas had this amazing information warfare program where they're putting out content every day, little triangles saying, "Here's look at the tank." They never actually show the tank getting blown up, but they never show the after effects. They just cut it right when the missile hits, and the tank probably survived, right? But the fact is that was getting put out almost every day. Whereas Israel had this ham-handed effort at putting out, here's a bunch of soldiers delivering medical supplies, and the boxes say medical supplies. I'm seeing through that one, So when you look at when you look at Russian disinformation, Ukraine can't really counter it by offering. They can counter it by offering counter narratives, although one good strategy is that each brigade essentially has their own propaganda officer that puts out videos of Russian soldiers getting blown up or tank battles or whatever. And by putting out content that is competing with enemy content, you only have so many eyeballs, you only have so many hours in the day. And if you are putting out more interesting content, eventually people are going to come around to your way of thinking because they're going to watch your content more. If Russia isn't necessarily putting that stuff out, or they don't really see the value in that sort of information warfare, then all you have to rely on are these, Russian milk bloggers or pro-Russia people who are posting, "Oh, Zelensky bought a BMW," which, all right, your eyeballs can go towards Zelensky built a BMW, or it can go toward cool, interesting combat footage. What would you rather do, right? So I think that's kind of one of those things that that Ukraine has done pretty well and has learned fairly quickly, which is the more good content that you put out, the more likely you are to get those sympathetic eyeballs.
Absolutely, yeah. And the final question for my documentary series, uh, do you believe that US President Donald Trump had ties to the KGB in the past, acted as asset, or do you consider the Agent Krasnov theory completely baseless? What
No.
do you see as the strongest arguments both for and against the theory?
So I can tell you that it's not the KGB anymore. I can't remember the darn name of the organization. But I can tell you that any Westerner who entered Moscow during the Cold War in the 80s, early 90s, they probably were contacted by the KGB. They just didn't know it, right? They had no idea that they were being manipulated. But I can tell you, FSB is a new organization, and SVR is the foreign intelligence. But I can tell you that when if President Trump was in Russia sometime during the 1980s as a wealthy figure, the Russians probably had somebody on him. If anything, the maid cleaning the room in the hotel was probably on the payroll of an intelligence organization. The idea of the president, even as a businessman, actively working with Russian intelligence, that would have come up in some way. During it would be this amazing story for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post to reveal proof, right? And at some point, like, what can a Russian security organization offer a guy who's already a millionaire, right? Women, all right, he has access to women. Money, a guy has money. Right? You could say, like, hey, you do this thing for me, I'll make sure this land deal goes through. I could see something like that, but I could see the Russian intelligence agency being ancillary to that, where you could have someone who you're dealing with who is on the part-time payroll of an organization, or is at least told to report back to that organization periodically. But I can't really see a situation where the president is actively working with Russian intelligence. There's no advantage to it. So I don't really see that as a thing. It's something that people like to say because, it wraps everything into one nice package. But I can tell you this: when I actually just finished a video, and hopefully it'll be out today. We'll see. And this video talks about pig iron. And pig iron is an iron component. It's an input into steelmaking. And the big thing about pig iron is that we talk about, like, we need to make more Patriot missiles. Yeah, we need to make more Patriot missiles, but we only have 5 pig iron mines in the entire United States. You know where we used to get the majority of our pig iron from? Russia. And that all ended when we put sanctions on Russia. So people wonder, when President Trump enters office and he's treating Zelensky like a piece of crap, well, that's because, like, he just wanted this war to end because those resources need to come from somebody, and we can't buy them from China. But we could buy them from Russia. And when I said, I did a video back in January or so where I talked about America's Tony Soprano foreign policy. And I'm not crazy about it, but we do have this gangster foreign policy now. And I said, we care about we're capable of kindness, we're capable of menace, but mostly we're interested in the rent. And that describes Venezuela in a nutshell. Be democratic, don't be democratic, we don't care. We want the oil to flow, and don't mess with Chevron. Let us invest in your country, but don't arrest any Americans when we travel there. Other than that, do what you want, we don't care, right? Capable of kindness, capable of menace, mostly just interested in the rent. And when you look at that and you look at Russia and Ukraine and we go, hey, you know what? Russia has all this pig iron. They have all these minerals, and the only other source of these minerals is China. Well, it might make sense to say, hey, let's freeze this war along the line of contact. Sorry, Ukraine, you lose 20% of your territory. Okay, let's start these minerals flowing again. That doesn't necessarily mean the president's a Russian agent. It just means he's looking at the situation the way a gangster might. Say, you know what? We need this thing. We're going to sell out this other country for our own interests. And honestly, at the end of the day, a lot of countries have to go by their own interests.
Thank you for this honest reaction and honest response. Ryan, thank you so much for this conversation. I would like to say thank you so much for your strong position from your perspective. Today with us was Ryan Macbeth, a SINT analyst, cybersecurity expert, and content creator. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ryan.
Thank you, man. You have a good day.
Have a good day.
All right. We're
Let's
uploaded?
do this. Yeah, it's
All right, guys. I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer while everything's uploaded. All right. You have a good night, Alex. See ya.
Have a good day. Thank you so much, and thank you, your audience, for viewing
For
this
dealing with
earlier
that.
today.
All right. Do you think Israel will have ballistic missiles thrown at them again? I don't know how many long-range ballistic missiles Iran has left in their inventory to do that. Qatar has actually been hit with more ballistic missiles than Iran has, and that's probably because Qatar is of much shorter range, right? What happened to Trump's mineral deal? I don't know. I have actually no idea what happened with the mineral deal. Yeah, sometimes, and I've said this before, and people hate it when I say it. Sometimes the president just says stuff. It's just, he doesn't really have much of a filter. It just comes off the top of his head. Hey, let's, oh yeah, I think we should totally annex Greenland. Like, what the hell? Where did that come from? But it is a reality that this is one of those things where the president says something and kind of goes with it. But I don't really see Israel. They could be hit with more ballistic missiles, but I think that Iran has kind of realized, like, hey, I'm not really getting the bang for the buck launching missiles at Israel because Israel's just going to retaliate. But it's a lot harder for Qatar to retaliate. Any insights about Lebanon? Where do you see the situation ending up? I don't know. That's a tough one. Lebanon's always going to be an issue because their government is so messed up. You've got Christian president, and then you have the Shia who have certain positions in the government, and it's a big mess. It's a big mess. So I don't know. Ideally, Hamas gets attrited to the point where they're just not useful anymore, and hopefully then Lebanon's military can be used to come in and mop up Hamas, and Lebanon can kind of take part of their own, take back their own country. What else we got? How long have I been on? 113 minutes. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom at some point. And I know I have got to go to my yearly checkup. Got to go to my doctor's appointment today. And actually, let's see, 10 a.m. Yeah, I'll probably be jetting out of here at 10 a.m. You think Russian soldiers surrendered and want to be returned to Russia in a prisoner exchange? I don't know. I'm sure they would want to return to Russia if they had family there or they thought their lives in Russia would be better. But I don't know where they would go. I mean, if you look at German prisoners, I believe most German prisoners returned to Germany. They didn't necessarily stay in the United States if that was even an option. I don't think it's an option for Russian prisoners to be returned, to not be. It might be. It might be an option for them to stay in Ukraine. I don't know. Are you observing the situation around the Russian Bear cyber spy groups? I am not. Chevron could help Venezuela out of poverty. I mean, Venezuela can help Venezuela out of poverty. It's not Chevron's fault. You know, there's a video game called Tropico, which kind of simulates a corrupt dictatorship. And what's kind of interesting is that, like, you know, if you want to be an authoritarian ruler, it actually makes a lot of sense, especially if most of your revenue comes from pulling minerals out of the ground. It actually makes sense to keep your population relatively poor and relatively unhealthy and pay for just enough education for them to be able to work in a mine or do a little bit of manufacturing, and send your elite away to Switzerland or whatever to go to college. Because you don't want a population that's too smart or too wealthy, you know? So I don't think it's Chevron that's the problem. It's Venezuela made a decision a couple of years ago to essentially put their people into poverty. That way the elite in Venezuela can get rich. And, you know, they did it under the guise of socialism. And so, you know, I got to tell you, like, I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said that socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. You know? So, yeah, that's kind of the major problem with socialism in general. Like, once you run out of other people's money, you know, then your population kind of starts to suffer. What else we got here? Mineral deal in Ukraine has been signed in its early stage. All right. Thank you, Life of Hein. I got 12 minutes left. What else we got here? Yeah, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan are very different. Yes, I know. You know, one of the bad parts about doing podcasts is that you have to remember something very quickly. Like I used to, years ago, I used to watch the Joe Rogan podcast and go, oh, that guy is wrong. And then when I started going on podcasts, I'm like, oh crap, I said the wrong thing. And you're expected to, so that's how you mistake Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. You know, it's hard when you're trying to be entertaining. Someone said, hey Ryan, do you think we have enough satellites looking down to do a 20 years rewind yet? Yeah, probably. Oh, thank you. X will ruin itself, X. Wonder if China will invade Taiwan before you get GTA 6. When is GTA 6 supposed to come out? I think in September? GTA 6 release date. November 19th, 2026. So China's window for invading Taiwan would either be October or would either be October or April because there's too much. The sea state in Taiwan is too in the Strait of Taiwan is just too great. So we will probably get GTA 6 before we get an invasion of Taiwan. That actually sounds like a good. That sounds like a good short video. Question. I mean, if I can tell you this: if I were China, I would wait until 2028, because then you have a presidential election, and that's going to be nobody's going to want to make a decision during a presidential election year. Oh wow! Look at that! Is Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to start at $70. You better be getting a good game for $70. I don't know. I don't really play video games all that much. I'll do. I've played Helldivers before. It's like I bought an Xbox a number of years ago because I had someone asked me to do a video on AI in Starfield, and that never I did a great video on it that got demonetized almost immediately. If the strait closed, will China have enough fuel to invade Taiwan next fall, next spring? That's this whole war may have pushed the invasion date back, just because this whole war may have pushed the invasion date back. Just because China may have looked at our capabilities and went, "Oh crap, their capabilities are real." And the big thing is, the U.S., like, we are going to come after you. That's something like not a lot of people, I think, really understood. When this whole thing started, like, we will come after you. We will find you in whatever bunker you are, and we will drop a bomb on you. And I don't know if China really conceptualized the fact that we could find an individual leader and strike that individual leader. And I think that changed the calculus. Have you heard about local militia in Gaza? Do you think there's a chance to overthrow Hamas? There are local militias. Really, they started out as criminal gangs. I mean, it's certainly possible. I used to say that Israel should fund these local militias. They might have done that, but lately I haven't really been keeping up with that part of the world. Let's see here. Straight closed. GTA. Have you heard about local militias? Cuba's on the chopping block soon. I think it was, and I think we've held off on that because we're just dealing with Iran right now. I am Serbian American ethnicity from California. Thanks. I don't really do geopolitics. Do I lean more conservative or liberal? I am like right in the center. I am not a very political person, but I can tell you that, I like guns, but I also think kids should get school lunches, and trans people are human beings. So, I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm just a regular person. And you know what? Most people are like that. Most people don't take a side. Instead, they kind of grit their teeth as they pull that voting lever. Oh God, I gotta vote for this guy. It's been like that for a while. Most Americans are in the center. It's just we have these two freaking people on both sides that are acting all crazy. When for the most part, we just want to raise families and live our lives and shoot our guns and have our kids get a good education. Shalom, Romanazana. Come to Israel again. Dude, that was a hard trip to begin with. It was an expensive trip too. Newsmax paid, I remember when I was in Israel, who's paying you to be there? Newsmax! They sent me! Who do you think's paying me? I work for Newsmax! Yeah, I'm also a Jackson Pollock splatter across the political spectrum. I mean, I think that there's some people that hang on to an ideology because they're not into sports, right? Like I'm a big DC fan, big DC sports fan, but I think some people, if they don't like sports, they look at politics like they're sports. My team has to win, and like I don't, they even if they don't necessarily agree with everything their team says, like they kind of shift over to that because like almost like some cultists. I think there was a person who studied this cult who said that the world would end on a certain day, and then the world didn't end, and the cultists didn't know what to do. Wondering if mythos is big. Well, we don't really know. Mythos is an AI program from oh my god, I forgot, not Ansible. Oh my god, I forget the darn name of the company. I just mentioned them. So yeah, Mythos is an AI agent that can supposedly find big issues, cybersecurity issues, Anthropic. And one of the big problems that that we're seeing is that Anthropic says it's so good that we're only going to give it to certain people. And when you look at like, in some ways it could be a situation where Anthropic kind of had that falling out with the government, the U.S. government, and so now they want to pretend they have this really amazing thing, so the U.S. government comes back to them. So that's a tough one. I don't know if that's true or not. I got 3 more minutes. If you guys want any other questions. Will Iran use FPV drones against ground forces of USA? I don't think so. And I say that because I don't know how many FPV drones Iran has. I'm smoking a Partagas Black Label. I don't know how many FPV drones Iran has. You also have to practice with them. And kind of one of the issues, IRGC might have practiced with them, but one of the issues, I knew someone who was in the Artesh, which is the Iranian army, not the religious army, the army. This guy who was in the Artesh said that he spent 2 years in the army. He fired 8 rounds out of his rifle during those 2 years in the army. And when you have that lack of training, then it's going to be a lot harder to use FPV drones because you're learning as you go, and that might not be the best time to learn. Whereas you look at a country like Ukraine, they have training all over the place. So if you're not really training your people in the use of FPV drones, then it's going to be a lot harder to hit American forces. And also, if those FPV drones are radio operated, we're going to jam the hell out of any enemy signals. They could be wire guided, but again, that's the experience that Iran has to get with those munitions, and the time to learn is not when someone is actually invading. How do you defend against unmanned surface marine drones? Man, if I knew how to defend against unmanned surface marine drones, I would sell that knowledge, and I would be living on a boat making Puff Daddy look like he was Amish. Unmanned surface drones are a big freaking problem. They're a big, big problem because they're so small and they can be powered by AI. I think the best way of defending against it is you have radar systems and you have thermal systems. that look for that signature jet ski engine, and then you try to take them out with like 25 millimeter cannons that can depress low enough to hit them. Or maybe you launch other drones. That might be a better option. You have other drones that are linked with that unmanned surface vehicle drone that can act as interceptors, like literally like living torpedoes. And when you think about it, a torpedo really is a drone, right? Torpedoes that automatically go after the target. You can kind of consider that first undersea drone. So it's not that much of a leap to say, how do you defend against FPV drones? Well, maybe you have a screening force of drones that are launched in the water. Or you could even have an umbilical. All right, hear me out here. You have an umbilical that connects with the escorting destroyer or the escorting littoral combat ship or whatever. And so these drones almost act like loyal wingmen. And if you detect an unmanned surface vehicle, that loyal wingman splits off and goes and tries to hit that vehicle in the water. And you combine that with firing 25 millimeter at that unmanned surface vehicle. But that might be a thing. It might just be a torpedo that is connected to the ship through an umbilical that is providing propulsion power. Yeah, that could probably be something like that. Or launched out into the water, into the air, and take off. Yeah, maybe. Like the old Sea Lance. I think Azrock and Sea Lance did that. It flew out and then went into the water. Yeah. All right, I am 2 minutes over. I'm going to cut this off. So thanks, everyone, for watching. Watch the Global Warning podcast like you just saw me do. Hey, thanks for watching, guys.